My name is Annetta Seecharran, and I'm an immigrant from Guyana. My family's been in this country for 30-something years, and they immigrated when I was 13 years old. I am currently the executive director of Chhaya Community Development Corporation, and today I am with Anuz and Dipika in the podcast at the end of the day.
Anita, thank you so much for being in the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What is your daily job like as the executive director at Chhaya Community Development Corporation?
I have the pleasure of running one of the most amazing organizations in New York City, serving the South Asian community in the areas of housing and economic empowerment. Our mission is to build power, economic empowerment, economic well-being, and housing stability for the low to moderate income South Asian community. Mm-hmm. And I'm very lucky to be leading this organization.
Yeah.
And for me, it is it's truly a labor of love. So I grew up in a New York City where there were very few South Asians.
Okay.
If you saw somebody who looked vaguely like me across the street, you would make a quick beeline to them and be like, "Who are you? Who are you, my long lost, brother or sister?" But so they were, it was socially isolating. Right. And, I come from a very traditional family. So most immigrants were and are. Right. So I wasn't allowed to sort of go out and hang out with your,
friends,
American, teenagers. We were kept very close to our family. And I'm grateful for it because New York City in the 80s was not the best place for a young person to grow up in.
Okay.
In retrospect, I'm grateful for it. When I was a teenager, I was not. I then went on and got a graduate degree in international political economy. And I was very fortunate that I landed a job upon graduation at the UN, which was so, unusual because I didn't have a connection to the UN. I literally just wrote a letter to the United Nations Development Fund for Women and typed it up with an old-fashioned typewriter. And I just shared my passion and my interest. I applied actually as an intern.
Okay.
So I got in as an intern. So I was in my last year of my graduate studies, last semester, and I just wrote a letter to the director. I found who the director was, wrote a letter to her, and I got called in for an interview. I was blown away that actually happened.
Okay.
And so I was interviewed by the deputy director, a woman named Marjorie Thorpe, who happened to be from Trinidad. And I don't know, we just had a connection. Maybe because I was from Guyana. I don't know what. I'm not sure why.
Right.
But so she hired me to work there as an intern for that semester. And that was an incredible experience. She had me write her speeches.
Wow.
I mean, it was, I was the only one who got hired that way, by the way. Everybody else got in through some connection. There were other interns. And then at the time, it was the lead up towards the big Beijing conference on women. It was the year before, I think. But she had me attend all of the preparatory meetings for this major conference, take detailed notes, and then develop talking points for her.
Okay.
It was amazing. But I would stay up late, really making sure I do a good job. And then when I graduated, she hired me.
Wow. So was that a paid internship, Annetta?
It was an unpaid internship.
And you were working extra hard in the unpaid internship.
This was incredible. I couldn't believe that I was actually at the UN, working at the United Nations Development Fund for Women, and the exposure that I was getting. I was attending these preparatory meetings on her behalf, on the deputy director's behalf, and briefing her on really incredible material. I couldn't believe my luck.
Right.
That I
right.
was like literally sitting in these like great halls, like hearing these testimonies from people around the globe about like issues facing women, and like being responsible for being basically the rapporteur,
Right.
collecting all the information, packaging it, and then briefing the deputy director of the organization. So I graduated, and she hired me, and that was paid.
Thankfully.
And then she then recommended me, because in order to really move up in the UN, you had to
Right.
be officially appointed by your country, or you had to go through the junior program officer
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
Junior professional program. JPP.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And so at that time, by then I had become an American citizen.
Okay.
Americans were overrepresented in that program.
Right.
So I had to decide whether I wanted to apply as a Guyanese or as an American. At any rate, I was still thinking about it. And so then another opportunity became available at UNDP with the gender program, and she recommended me. And so I ended up working with the gender program for a while. I didn't go through the junior program officer program.
Right.
I think ultimately I realized from my experience at the UN, I was really grateful for it, that I couldn't tell if we were really actually making a difference and where the impact lied. And I think the bureaucracy was so huge that I think unless you were like truly heading the agency,
Right.
you were just a cog in the wheel.
Got it.
And you were just pushing paper around. Graduate school for me was so key. It was truly like a turning point, because, and you know, I feel like as by graduate school you're mature enough so you can really seize opportunities.
Right.
So I needed a part-time job, and I saw like a notice for a job in the graduate like job center, and it was to work with children in the Bronx. And I thought, oh, kids, I love kids. I don't know anything about them, but I love kids. So I applied for this job to work with kids. I showed up to the interview, and the woman was like, I think you're probably a little bit too bright for this role that you're applying for.
Too bright.
I just from talking to you, I just don't think this is a fit. I'm going to hire you to run a new program. And it was a federal program, a substance abuse prevention program. But she's like, I feel like you're capable to run this program.
Okay.
So I ended up so she hired me to run this program while I was in graduate school. And so I was like juggling my
Intensive and...
yeah. But no, this was a real job.
Okay.
But there was the experience of doing that. So then actually when I went on and worked at the UN, I remained connected to this organization.
Okay.
And I volunteered on Saturdays to keep the program going.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
it was a 1-year program. It was a 1-year pilot program. So I launched that program. It ended at the same time my graduate studies ended.
Okay.
But I continued because I'd built such an affection for the children there.
Wow, this is interesting. I'd like to pause you here for a while.
Yeah.
You, at that point, you were already doing a job with the UN.
Yeah.
And you still volunteer.
I continued as a volunteer on
and
Saturdays.
That too, at such a young age. I mean, like, at such a young age, you might be like, oh, I've already got the dream job. Who would care to volunteer?
No.
But
I fell so deeply in love with this work.
Okay.
And while I was there, I tried to get kids who were, Guyanese or from South Asia, kids who share my cultural background into the program, and I couldn't because they didn't feel welcome.
Okay.
I tried. Well, one, it was odd. It was a new thing. Our people were not used to this kind of social service.
Right.
But I think that's where I first got the idea that there is a need for social services like this for our community.
Okay.
It was that experience. That was key to my career. And my boss at the time is still a good friend and a mentor and has been instrumental in my career.
The boss
The woman who hired me, Diana Torres, who said, "You're too smart for this.
Right.
I have something better for you." Is still in my life.
wow.
And has been key at every critical moment in my career.
Wow.
Right.
And I think, if there's one takeaway and one piece of advice I have for young people is it is so important to be intentional about cultivating your networks. And it's not just and I don't suggest being transactional about it. I think really being truly authentic and building relationships. Like, the woman who had such an impact in my career, I met when I was in my early 20s, when I was in graduate school. And I stayed in touch with her, and she's still, a close friend and somebody who's really important to me. But that was an authentic friendship and relationship that I built, not because I thought, I could use her one day.
Okay. That's what you mean by transactional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but because I valued her as a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And in my career, I feel like at times of transition, I've had the support system and the networks there for me. And I'm really lucky that way. But I've also been very intentional about building authentic relationships with folks.
And how do you build those authentic relationships? Because from my generation, we always talk about networking and meeting new people every single day, so that you can build your vast network. But when you meet people and, you hang out with them for a couple of days, you just know them. The relationship don't become organic, but you still know that person, So I'm just wondering, how do you make that relationship organic so that
I'm going to say something that's, I think, counter to these times that we're living in, where everything is so surface, and like you've got 1,000 friends on Facebook, and like how many more thousands on Instagram, and so on and so forth. And I think at some point, like, it all starts to get really gray. And how do you discern who to call on or who would respond to you? And I really think, like, the greatest benefit and satisfaction comes from deeper relationships. And I may sound very anachronistic saying something like that, but I think that there is going to be, the pendulum is going to swing the other way, where that is where progress will come from, where the benefit of knowing somebody will come from, in terms of whether it means for you a job or something else that is meaningful in life. But I think it comes from those deep relationships. But it takes time, right?
Yeah,
those deep relationships take time. Exactly. I mean, I've had a 25-year career. Like, those are relationships I've been building over the years. But I also think when you are authentic in your interests and in your passions, it attracts other authentic people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really think so. And I so often young people will come to me and say, how do I have a career like yours?
Right.
What did you do? Honestly, the only thing I've ever done is figured out what I'm really most passionate about and just work relentlessly.
Okay, now time to go.
Find your passion.
Yes.
Find a person and keep working hard.
Because it's easy to work hard when you find your passion.
Right.
Find work that is not work. Find work that is labor of love.
Yes. And on that note, it's time to say bye-bye. We will catch you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey guys, a quick note. If you have a personal story that you think might be helpful to the newly arriving immigrants in the US, please contact us. We would love to feature you in our podcast. Go to our website, podcastattheendoftheday.com, and write to us by going to the feedback section.
And by the way, if you love this podcast, you can support us with a small donation. Your help will enable us to continue producing more episodes. The link to support our podcast is in the description below.